Cool.
Great. So this morning UK time, afternoon, evening in Australia time, I'm back here with my lovely friend David Cowan. How are you doing, David?
I'm well, thank you, Catherine. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I might have to keep going on mute because we've just had some builders arrive in our garden, and I've got two of the doggies in here and they're looking at the diggers like, what's going on? So if I keep going mute or you keep hearing the doggies barking at the diggers, don't worry, everyone. So I've had some really interesting discussions over the last week, David, and I've been really looking forward to this discussion with you because we always just let it go where it wants to go. Obviously, there's an awful lot happening at the moment. And one of the things you and I have touched on quite a bit in the past, but we wanted to explore deeper today, is this idea of how much do we need to go back and look backwards before moving forwards?
Mm, yeah. Uh, it's a very, very kind of funny concept, isn't it? Maybe take one step forward to go one step back to go two steps forward. And I kind of became aware of this concept maybe, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago. And I was having a phone call with this business that was going to help me do my life coaching business back in 2016, 2017. And the guy said to me, he goes, David, you have to, sometimes in life you have to go backwards before you can go forwards. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess that makes sense. I mean, in some ways it definitely makes sense. In other ways, you're like, well, why can't I just keep going forwards,
Yeah.
But so I started this journey, and not only did I go backwards, but I felt like I took maybe 10 steps backwards. Like my life just went completely the wrong direction, from which I was hoping for it to go. Like I thought, okay, I'll go back a little bit, and then this time next year, I'll be in a much better off position, than. But literally after like 6 weeks, things just started to take a turn for the worst. And I remember working this bank job, and I was like, what have I even done to myself? Like I wasn't happy before, but now I'm really not happy. Now I'm like in a far worse position. I'm making half the money that I was making before, uh, paying more for my living expenses, working at what I was saying is like worst job as well. And I'm actually trying to improve my life. Like this is me actually working towards improving myself, but things are just not going anywhere where I want them to go. And it wasn't until a little bit later, maybe a year or so, and things did start to improve. And then ever since then, my life has just gotten better progressively. Every year just keeps getting better and better. So the whole idea of going backwards first to go forwards, I think is very valid. It's like, if as long as you're not always going to make the right decision. You're not always going to make the right decisions. People are going to make mistakes. We're only human after all. But in doing so, you might take a few steps back, or you might seem like you're going really far back. But in the scheme of things, now I look back at that period of my life, and I think, well, if I hadn't made that decision to go backwards, or multiple decisions to go backwards, well, A, we wouldn't be having this conversation, and B, my life would just be probably the exact same as it was before then. Maybe even worse by now. Because when things
Yes.
don't really, it would be worse. It would be worse. Like I'd still be working the same job. I'd probably still be drinking a lot of alcohol. I probably would be even more depressed. And yeah, so I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm going to stand up and model one of my Liz t-shirts. The more I learn, the less I know. Bryce and I have been modeling some of these things, and it embodies how I feel. I think you're really right. I've been having a lot of conversations with myself and with other people about this very point, because a lot of us who've been talking about this for a couple of years now, when I mean this, the things that are all going on and everything, we've reached a stage, a lot of us are having conversations saying we just don't want to talk about that anymore. We want to move forward and move forward into creating. But I keep going backs and forwards because I think it's so much more complex than that. Because when we do look back and we do sort of take a few steps forward, it's like if a tennis coach gets a new coach, sometimes they completely stop what they're doing with their backhand because they've got into bad habits, and they have to sort of literally restart from the ground again and right from scratch, because sometimes it's very difficult to correct bad habits. You've got to go right back to the start, the ground zero sort of thing, to go back to move forward. And I think what you were saying there, it's got so many parallels with what people are going through at the moment. You know, everyone's at different stages of their awakening and of their journey of realizing, where are we at now, from everything to what we actually standing on. Is the earth flat? Is it round? I was just listening to some really amazing stuff. I'll forward it to you afterwards. I'll put the link below. Bryce, Mark Attwood and I started having discussions about how everything that we've been told about our history of civilization, of humanity, is just completely wrong. And we know that we're now so much evidence out there to show it's wrong. And you've got to ask why is all this stuff being covered up? So I think it's a constant flow, like a water, of going backwards, learning new stuff, reassessing. Hindsight is really, really powerful, because you can look back. So long as you're not looking back in a negative judgmental way, and you're looking back in terms of, what did I learn from this? What are the messages there? And moving forward again. And then hopefully that sort of momentum will carry you further forward than you were before. Does any of that make sense? I think it's just what people are going through so much at the moment. How much do they look into all the atrocities that have happened, all the lies we've been told? And how much do you say, no, okay, now I know enough, now I'm going to move forward with that information?
Well, I think what's important to also realize is that when you do look back, or if you are trying to create something new, you have to be absolutely crystal clear about what you want to create. Because if you're not, then you're just going to probably do the same thing as you did before, aren't you? Because we all have the ingrained paradigms that got us to where we were at that point in time. If we don't consciously change those paradigms and get really, really clear about what we want, we're just going to repeat the same things over and over. So people might think, okay, I really want to move forwards, but where are they moving to is the question. You know, where is humanity moving to, I think, is an even bigger question. Because without strong leadership, obviously the leadership that we've had so far has taken us to this point in time. Without strong leadership, and without people wanting to, I don't want to use the term follow, but without people wanting to work with that leader and work in that for a bigger vision, then we're going to have a conflict.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, it really is. For me, this is exactly where I'm at the moment. The conversations we're having is looking at these in terms of, you know, I've been listening to some stuff over the last 24 hours, when I will share more of it with listeners as I get more familiar with the names, but about how, you know, everything that we've been told about the history of humanity is wrong. And a lot of people have known it's been wrong for ages, but they've been ridiculed. And don't we see that in all aspects of life, whether it's the medical system, whether it's health, education, politics, finance? It's very easy to shut something down by ridiculing. And just when they say, you know, sort of humor and laughing at yourself is really important, and it's high up on the spiritual scale, ridicule to me is the lowest of vibration, because that's just a defensive energy that's shutting down anything constructive. And I think I had this aha moment today. You know how throughout this movement it's been, you know, Trump's been saying America first, America first. And then I'm just getting it up on my phone. I've just been listening to something this morning. I've just sent it to Bryce. And it was triggered from a discussion yesterday about Graham Hancock explains the mysteries of Atlantis and the Göbekli Tepe. And this is just absolutely fantastic. And I've always wondered, why am I interested in that? Because I know nothing about archaeology. You know, I'm not a geologist and things. I've got members of my family that are. But it's his putting his bits of the jigsaw puzzle together. And now I'm just absolutely fascinated about this, because it's made me look some of these things like America first. Well, I'm now coming across, lots of the listeners probably knew this years ago, I didn't, that the civilizations, there's a lot of evidence to show that the first civilizations were actually on America, and that's been deliberately hidden from people. Now, I can't go into any more detail than that, because I'm just starting down my research line with this. But the reason I'm doing it is because I'm always asking why. Why would it be so important that they hid certain books of the Bible from us? I've never really studied the Bible apart from elementary stuff at school. But why are they hiding this science from us? Why are they hiding the natural remedies from us? Why are they hiding ancient civilizations and what the world really looked like? Why are they making up stories about, you know, archaeologists aren't allowed to dig below a certain level because they are then finding human remains for a long while? It's the why that
Giants
interests me more actually than the actual story. Why do they want this covered up, and who's they?
Right, right. I mean, the why question is always a powerful question, no matter what, in any situation. I did see a video that somebody sent me recently where this African American woman was talking about how, and this will tie in with what you said about how the first civilizations were in America, because you know how they always say the body of the first man was found in Africa.
Yeah.
This woman was saying that African Americans, there were no slave ships at all. She said they all originated in America. She said she's like they're the Native Americans. I don't know what that necessarily means for the Red Indians and what that means for them. But maybe there's two native races. I don't know, but I haven't looked into it either. But when she said that, I was like, well, that's really strange. And like, obviously, we all thought they all came from Africa, right?
Yeah.
That's not to say that there aren't African-looking people that originate from that continent either. But I mean, who really knows? I think that, and are they doing it just to confuse us, or are they doing it for a much deeper reason? You know, are they doing it? It could be both, couldn't it? I mean, I really don't know. But I was one of those people that kind of like the mainstream media. I never watched it even beforehand. I was never really into the history that much either, and I don't know whether it was because it was an ignorance thing, or it was because you know, maybe my higher self knew it was BS, and you shouldn't, you know, well, I don't want to say concern yourself with it, because there's an element of truth, I think, in some history, but at the same time, you know, how would you know? And yeah, you just wouldn't.
I think it's so true. I mean, it's really weird because as a child, I always had a photographic memory, so I could revise anything from an exam. And it was really fascinating to me. And I can remember having a discussion with my dad about this from quite an early age, that I had some internal compass, not right, it was just my internal compass that decided what I was going to completely forget after the exam and mark as irrelevant, which was most of my history. So I always came top in history and got full marks because I can remember facts easily, but I didn't believe them. So after the exam, if you'd have asked me a month later, I didn't, because I'd put it in my, for me, irrelevant box. Was other things that I'm really interested in, I can remember for years, because somehow I've decided, in my internal system has decided for me there's some significance in that and I need to remember it. And it's lovely, all these questions. I think I'm so happy I'm having these conversations with people like this, because this whole pandemic has opened up such a completely different way of looking at the world for me, that seems so natural, that seems so right, that seems exactly why I was frustrated with certain things in the past, because any type of censorship is deliberate. You know, there should be no harm in stopping people asking questions, because I've asked a lot of stupid questions in my life and I don't need to follow them up further because someone's come back with an answer and I've thought, oh yeah, okay, fair enough, that sounds reasonable to me. But when you're having to censor anything, I can't think of, and I'm sure people in the comments below will tell us, but I can't think of a satisfactory reason why censorship would be okay. Because even if you're discussing something that's pretty controversial, let people who want to hear it, and let people that don't want to hear it just walk on by.
Yeah, you had a number of points there and I don't remember them all, but because I think it's obviously control is one of the main things. And when you can control the narrative, you can control everything. I mean, I was thinking about this today for what I spoke to you about before, about the psychic attacks, which we'll go into later on. I was thinking about our reality and how we don't really know the true nature of it and how it really works. And I was like, it's so crazy that we've been taught that reality looks and works a certain way, when in actual fact it's, well, I don't know, the opposite. I don't know if the opposite's a really good description. It's a terrible description, but you know what I'm saying? Like, reality really doesn't work the way we've been taught. And for that reason, it goes back to the ridicule thing, because you say something like, oh, you talk about aliens, or you talk about the supernatural, whatever, and a lot of people, some people will just automatically ridicule it as being stupid, and it shuts people down, you know, and it's another form of control. It's like what David Icke says is, you know, we tend to police ourselves with our belief systems. You know, everybody has a belief system, and then someone says something that's outside of your belief system, and it conflicts with you to a point where you ridicule that person, which is the first stage of grief, actually. Then you will maybe not, maybe it's the second. I don't know. Anger or ridicule is one of the first. I think it's ridicule. That would make more sense. Ridicule would make more sense. Then it's, you just stay in that box. You know, we all just stay in this box.
It's so true, and it's I was just thinking myself, and I was thinking about how I've reacted to certain members that refuse to have any sort of conversation about what's going on at the moment, about the V, about this and everything, refuse to get into a debate. And I can see when you're frustrated, when you can't get your point across, because we're so used to having to justify everything we say or everything we believe. And so many of us have been talking so much over the last few years, and a lot of people for a lot longer, about intuition and tuning into intuition. And it's really fascinating because, like, I've been following Dr. Andrew Wakefield for years, because when I had my children, he was the one that raised all the issues with the MMR vaccine and got completely ridiculed, career ruined and everything. And loads of my scientific friends still believe the lies that were told about him, that it was all false evidence. It's now been proved to be completely true what he was saying, and that the companies, the pharmaceutical companies and the medical research councils were deliberately covering up evidence of what this did to children, particularly certain groups of children. Anyway, the point of me saying that is I watched one of his latest documentaries or films, and I think it's called 19, can't remember the date, The Act, and anyone can look it up, I'll find it. And one of the things he says in there when he's being interviewed about the making of that film is that his wife, they were on holiday, and this is a very, very scientific doctor that's, you know, been very trained in the scientific methods. And so through all that he's been through in the last 25 years, with his career being in shambles, he's been completely ridiculed. He said what he's realized is all the knowledge in the world cannot make up for your intuition, your gut feeling, when you just know something's wrong, even if you can't explain it. And he gave a scenario where he was on holiday with his wife and their children, and him and his wife were inside and the children were outside, and suddenly, with no warning, his wife just got up, ran out the house, ran across the garden and rescued their baby child from drowning in the swimming pool. Oh, wow. And something had told her, oh my God, there's something wrong, go now. And she'd listened to it and saved their child's lives. And he said he had no idea. He had no feeling at all that his child was in danger. Right. And it was just, it's really, it might not make sense to people. I'm saying this, and the reason I'm saying this is just hit home just how devalued in our Western culture this intuition has become, and how actually nothing is more important about that. And even when we can't articulate things very well and might make ourselves, you know, when I'm talking about a lot of the stuff I'm talking about now, I don't know the facts, I'm just on my journey, but my gut feel tells me they're right. My gut feel tells me they're right. And not only that, that this is very significant to what we're all going through now. And we've talked about the control systems, the deep state, etc. We've talked about how long they've been going on for. And I just, my personal feeling from what I'm feeling right here, right now, is it's been going on a lot longer than we've been known, and that a lot of this suppressed history of the world and humanity is linked to the agendas that we're seeing now. Now, I've no way of backing that up, but that's certainly how I'm feeling.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's one of those things where people, I didn't experience this, but I know people that have kind of become aware of what's going on now, and they think, oh, just because they're only aware of it now, it's only been happening for the last 5 years, or
Yeah.
you know, not even just the last 2, since this whole thing kicked off. But in actual fact, it's thousands, and I don't know the real number. But I look at different things, and I watched all the Full of Bile series, you know, up to date, and they went through the history, especially in the sequel. They went back in time, and I look at certain things, and I just think that because I know how the human mind works, and I know that, you know, the thoughts create our reality. I just imagine what life could have been like if they didn't exist. You know what I mean? Like if there was, like it would be unrecognizably awesome. You know what I mean? Like it would just be if those negative thoughts that we've been programmed with were replaced with positive ones, of course. You know, like and we're all vibrating at like 400, 500-ish, then the world would be insanely good. It would be crazy. You know what I mean?
I think that's where we're going. And Bryce and I were talking yesterday, actually. You said a really good point on our last round table with Medina and Bryce and you and I. And we both picked up on it when you said it. It was just really hit is so important that, you know, you do need the duality. We have been in a 3D system which is run on duality of good and bad. And it's the age-old thing that, you need the dark to appreciate the light. But perhaps that's an old story. Perhaps we're moving away from that. And from what I understand, moving into the age of Aquarius, we are moving away from a dualistic system. And how exciting is that? Because we've always had this story, which might well be true. When I'm saying stories, I'm not meaning it's not true, that you need suffering for growth. You need to learn lessons the hard way. And I've always thought, well, no, you don't. And perhaps that's just moving forward now. We are no longer going to need to learn lessons the hard way. I mean, how exciting is that? Have I lost you?
Yeah, it's very. Oh, my internet's a little bit unstable. I don't know if you can still hear me.
Oh, I lost you for a minute. Mine was yesterday, actually, and I never have unstable internet here since they put in the new fast fiber. So you right now?
How is it now?
Yeah, that seems okay now. Yeah. Oh, no.
Okay, there's a little bit of a delay, so
Yeah.
I think it's my internet's still a bit unstable, and I can't see your video. But if you can still hear me, I do believe, I agree with you. I think that although it might seem almost impossible that could happen.
Oh, we've lost David for a minute. So we will just wait for him to rejoin. Start again. Right, can you hear me okay? Have we got you back okay?
Yeah, it's good
No.
Yeah, I think it should be okay now.
Okay, let's see how we get on. It is weird though, because we, again, I mean, I know you guys in Australia have been having internet issues for a while, but it seems to be hitting a lot of the rest of us.
It's been bad lately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where were we? We talked about the duality
But,
and, you know, good and bad, dark and light.
yeah, I think it would be very interesting to see a world without duality, but also at the same time, a really high percentage of the world's population are really good people, you know, and yet it's always the minute percentage that make the biggest difference, isn't it? So, you know, obviously we're seeing what we're seeing now. It's that not even the 1% of the world's population that have made the hugest difference to our way of life. And if you look at it on the flip side of that, it's now people like you and I and other patriots and other people around the world that are doing the work and going to the rallies and doing those kinds of things and speaking out, that are making the difference on the other side of the scale, you know?
Yeah, I love the fact
But
sorry,
yeah, I don't know. No, yeah, it'd be very interesting to see a world without duality. I mean, I think there would always be some sort of duality, don't you think? I mean, it would be crazy. But what I think you mean is that there would just be far less evil. I mean, when you take away those beings and the people on the earth that are doing the stuff that they've been doing for so long, when you take that away, you may still have, or you will still have, the odd person here and there who is bad or evil, right? That's living on the planet. But because the narrative and the goal for the planet has now changed, hopefully, then we won't be seeing it as much. It won't be as, in our faces as much, right?
Absolutely, because I just don't think they'll be able to have the impact that they've had up until now. Because once you do see things, you can't unsee them. And that's the beauty of it all, is unless they give us some drug to give us amnesia or something, you can't unsee it. And a lot of people, I've been hearing a lot of interesting talks about psychedelics recently. Now, I've never taken psychedelics yet. Fascinates me, but I'm quite intrigued at the moment of where I am now to see how much I can do internally without them. But I'm fascinated to hear the consistent stories that people have. And a lot of people, once you have been through that experience, you never see the world the same again. Because once that certain part of you has been opened up, everything you're viewing through a new pair of eyes, through a new feeling, through through probably a real attachment to your soul and your inner knowing. And I think you're right. It's like the more people that make these subtle changes in their own life, the less the negative can affect them. You can't get away with being a bully in the class at school once everyone stands up against it and sees that chink of weakness in you.
Yeah. Psychedelics, I think, I've done them a couple of times, and more recently I had an experience a couple of months ago now, which was very interesting. And I saw lots of, I feel like it's like I saw the Matrix kind of crumbling, and I saw futuristic cities, and it was quite an interesting experience. I've had some other not so great ones before, but that was also before I was more awake. I was more conscious. I wanted to do it now from a consciousness perspective, because I wanted to see, and obviously the dose was managed. It was a specific amount rather than just having whatever was there. So yeah, it was very interesting.
Yeah, fascinating. So psychic attacks, that was another area we were going to talk about today. What's your experience of that been recently that you want to share?
Well, I had that experience that I spoke to you about. Yeah. More recently, this is something I was aware of only recently, and I had one that I shared with you a couple of weeks ago, which was nothing really too crazy compared to what's happened recently. And I didn't even know if this was definitely a psychic attack, but I had to think about it. And so maybe a week and a half ago, this channel popped up on my YouTube feed, and it was a channel that told ghost stories and murder mysteries and missing persons cases and stalkers in the forest and things like that. And I was always a little bit intrigued about that stuff. And then I started watching a video. It's very addictive as well. Like, people were, a lot of comments. It's a huge channel. It's got like 5 million subscribers. Each video has like 3 or 4 or 5 million views. So it's a very popular channel. And all the people are saying, this channel is so addictive, this channel is so addictive. And I found myself being very addicted to it. And yesterday, I watched a couple of videos, and there was some real disturbing stories obviously in there. And I started on the weekend, I felt myself becoming a little bit more jumpy, kind of a little bit more on edge, a little bit more fearful, and doing things that I wouldn't normally do, like checking the windows, checking the doors all the time, and things like that. Not all the time, but a bit more often. And then last night I woke up at like 11:30, and I just couldn't sleep. I fell asleep okay, but I got to bed about 10, so I'd only been to sleep for like an hour maybe. I woke up, couldn't sleep. And then I started to feel very kind of anxious and a little bit uneasy, and it wasn't too hot last night, but I was sweating a little bit, and I felt like something was moving my sheets, my quilt a little bit. in the room. And I didn't really get freaked out by it. I just kind of, it was kind of like, yeah, whatever about it. But as like my mind kept racing, and I kept repeating songs that lyrics to a song that I was working on earlier that night in my head, like over and over and over and over. Like my mind was just, when you study, when you're studying for a test or something, and you can't just get anything out of your head, you just keep repeating stuff. It was kind of like that. And I was like, well, I'm never going to be able to get to sleep like this. So I turned the light on, and I kind of just looked at YouTube, and I made a point of going onto YouTube and blocking YouTube from recommending that channel to me anymore, because I didn't want to watch it anymore, because some of the stories, especially around shadow people, really freaked me out. And then I thought, what if, because I don't search that kind of stuff, it's not like, usually my feed has, high vibe stuff, spiritual stuff, music stuff, truth stuff, and that's about it. Like I don't usually get videos like that pop up on my feed, but I did. So I was thinking, well, what if the algorithm, or what if somebody or something put that video there for me to entice me and then to lull me, because now I was in the fear state. My vibration had been lowered really quite significantly over the last week, and so I thought, well, what if that was a psychic attack? And I thought, well, that's a possibility. It could also be possible that I just did it to myself, just being intrigued and wanted to watch these things. But I don't know. So I wanted to know if you'd experienced anything like that, or have you heard anything like that, or what were your thoughts around the possibility of it being a psychic attack?
I think it's really fascinating. It's something that sort of Bryce and I were going to talk about more. So perhaps we'll talk about this next week when we get together with her, because there's, again, I'm luckily, touch wood everywhere, not that familiar with psychic attacks, and I do not want to invite any in there, get my sorpamento out everywhere. But again, I equally think I've had some experiences over the last year where I've been speaking to certain people that I've met through sort of doing this work, and then I felt very, very differently after speaking to them, and certain things have started to happen and things. So how much is a psychic attack, and how much is, again, it's just which words and how we want to label it. But that, what you've just described there, how relevant is that to what so many of the population are going through? And isn't it fascinating how by all these different means, it's quite easy to shift our mood and vibration for the positive or the negative. So you've only been watching that channel for a week, and it's had a really profound effect on you. And you think of all these people that have been brainwashed for so long with these messages. No wonder they find it really difficult to let the light in. No wonder they find it difficult to see a different opinion. I mean, I do think that sounds very odd, what you're saying. I think it's odd as to how it got on your feed in the first place. And then I think it's odd also as to what made you go and watch so many of them. And the fact that you'd noticed also that people saying it's really addictive, I think we should discuss this more with the others, because a lot of people are feeling this. And I suppose it's also like, what have you done? So you recognize that, and then you blocked it for your channel. And then have you done anything else? Have you done any cleansing, any salt baths, anything else? What else do you do to sort of cleanse your field?
Yeah, I don't know what to do. So I haven't done anything else. I do this mini meditation every 2 hours or so, to keep my vibe high. And I do a gratitude meditation every morning too. And so, but the interesting thing is that what I noticed about my energy as well during that week, I felt kind of a little bit lower energy. Like I didn't want to run to the park anymore. I didn't want to. I just walked there, and I would still work out with a fair level of intensity, but I just didn't want to run. I was like, oh, I can't be bothered. And so when I woke up this morning, even after having probably about 3 hours less sleep than I would normally have, I felt way better. I felt lighter. I ran to the park, and and I didn't even feel the urge to look at that channel today at all. So I I think what I must have done, whether it was a thing or not, whatever it was, I just said to myself, at one point during the night, I just said, I only let in love, peace, and joy. And I kind of repeated that to myself. And I changed my thought loop because all the lyrics are going through my head and other crazy things were going through my head. I just changed my thought loop to I love myself and just kept repeating that over and over again all the time, you know? And then, this morning, like I said, I woke up feeling lighter, more positive. I haven't had to nap today, which is interesting because I had far less sleep than I usually do. And I wanted to run to the gym, to the park. So I think whatever I did was good and it worked. But it's also being mindful of that too, isn't it? It's being mindful of you being in charge of your vibration. You do have the power, and that's one of the things that I guess we'll have to keep reminding ourselves. I know I do, because we can get into these funks at times, and if we don't take stock of it, we don't take the power back, then we're just going to keep going down this path that we don't want to, that we don't care for.
I love that. And I think you've said something so important then. You always do, David. Every time we speak to you, there's always some real gems in there, because you do have the power. So you can have your sage, your sulpamenta, your salt, your crystals, everything. And all of those are lovely. I mean, I've got them everywhere. But equally, we have the power just to say no ourselves and control it. And I know I bore people by saying I love Joe Dispenza and things, but one of the things I love so much about him is he says, look, you make the decision and you can change it now. And I've seen that happen. I've personally experienced it. So I know how quickly, when we're working at a metaphysical level, the normal rules of biology and time just don't apply at all. And you've just made a decision. And yes, people can make things use of yourself. I mean, I've got really good talk later with Dr. Christina Ram from Roots, who is the most amazing lady. And there's so many things as humans that we can do for ourselves and our plants and our animals to make life easy for ourselves. Don't give you a hard time. As my dad used to say, well, if this is all true and it's all energy, I could eat McDonald's all day and just bless the food and it just be really powerful for my body. I was like, yes, you could, but you need quite a high level of spiritual awareness to be able to do that, and just keeping that consciousness. Or you could make it life easy for yourself and drink loads of green juice as well, and every shade in between. But you just sat there, made a decision last night, but luckily you had enough awareness to recognize that. And I think what some of these discussions are doing now, and bringing these sort of things like psychic attacks into the open, they're raising everyone's awareness so that hopefully people will recognize when they're not themselves. We've had that saying for so long, haven't we? I'm just not feeling myself. And that's the perfect example of it.
Yeah, and I think what's also important to add is that when you make that decision, it's not going to be like you make the decision and it happens straight. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's not going to, you're still going to experience challenges. Like, that channel kept popping up. Like, I had to keep saying no, like I viewed it at least 4 times and say, no, hide it, don't recommend it, I don't want to see it. And it just kept popping up and I was like, nah. And even when it has, sometimes you get a playlist and it doesn't have the channel name or anything, it just has mix and it's got a little box and it's got that popped up today, and I was like, nah, get rid of that too. And you just have to be firm. You have to kind of just say, no, it's not happening, not today, Satan, and just be done with it, because you're going to get tested. You're going to keep getting tested.
You're so going to get tested, and it's like where your resilience. So many people, Tony Robbins always speaks about it. You have to burn those bridges. Again, make life, don't keep putting temptation in your path, and someone else was putting it in your path there, and you quickly acted on it and said no, 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 no. Whilst that, oh well, perhaps I'll just watch one more. We all know how disastrous that can be with whatever sort of addiction it is. It's very tempting to say a little bit doesn't make a difference, but is that really true? And when we look at some of the awful atrocities that have been uncovered, that we've all been uncovering over the past few years. How many times does that little step in the wrong direction lead to some really disastrous life choices?
Yeah, well, if you think of a plane, you know, if you if you took a plane and it was like 1 degree off course, by the time you get to your destination, it's going to be so far off course.
Mm.
You know what I mean? It's kind of the same thing, isn't it? It's like, oh, just do this thing once or whatever, but you keep doing a little bit and a little bit and a little bit, and before you know it, you after a week and a half, you're addicted to a scary YouTube channel, and your high vibration has gone to to fear. Like it happens that fast. It's I was really surprised at how fast it happened actually. And excuse me. And I was lying in bed and I was thinking, I'm in the fear state right now.
Mm.
This is crazy. Like I haven't been here for God knows how long. This has actually been the worst state that I've been in since the whole thing started. Even when I found out they were going to be doing, they announced the mandatory things, back like a year and a half ago. I was a bit of a state then, and watching certain videos where maybe certain truthers were kind of fear mongering and things like that. That put me into a bit of a state. But this was worse than that, and it happened so fast, and I was like, this is insane. So yeah, I
Wow.
was really really surprised and taken aback by how quickly it happened.
And did you notice other people or animals in your life reacting differently to you at all?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So my cat last night, I guess it was at its peak last night, and the cat, there's a window. We've got these windows, and in front of the window there's a little chair outside where the cat sleeps sometimes. And one of my cats was fine with me, but the other cat kept jumping onto the window wanting to come in, and she's a bit of a scaredy cat anyway. She doesn't always come in straight away. She does take her time,
Mm.
But she kept jumping up and going back down, jumping up and going back down, and she did it about 3 or 4 times, and in the end I just left her on the chair. And so yeah, I noticed that, and I was like, I wonder if she knows, like,
Yeah, definitely.
so I was already kind of onto it.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? It's really fascinating. And also how, when our vibration slips, other people, other humans notice it, either at a conscious or a subconscious level as well. And then you get into that vicious circle of perhaps reacting to each other not in such a positive way. But yeah, isn't it frightening how quickly this can happen? But as you say, if it can go down very quickly, you can bring it back up just as quickly again. Be interesting to see below.
Right.
Let us know what you're doing. And I think this would be a good one to carry on the discussion with next week with Bryce and Medina as well, because there's a lot of this happening. But I think also it's a bit like, if you buy a white car, then suddenly you just notice the white cars. Once you've got that awareness and if you've opened your mind to things like this existing, then you start seeing, oh, that, or that, or that, or that, and you start connecting the dots and just seeing how clear this is. And yet, but before, these things might have been happening, but we just weren't aware of them. We didn't have awareness of what was happening and why we were feeling like that.
Mm. Yeah, and on the weekend I was walking the dog, and I was in the park just there, and I heard this crack, and then it was quite far away. It was a good few hundred meters away. This whole branch just fell off this tree, a big one, a big branch, and it kind of reminded me of all these stories that I'd heard in the woods, because a lot of crazy stuff happens in the woods. And now I never want to go to the woods. Like I don't care
I'm
whether
going
it's
out with my
during the
dog
day or
in it, but my dogs are the best clearers of energy ever. Yeah.
but also I heard that cats or dogs probably, or any animal really, when you have them around you, don't they also protect you?
Oh, massively. I mean, I've got my two, see Indy on the sofa there and Lola's asleep. Oh, you can't really see her because I've got all my phone in. There's Lola asleep there. Star's inside, my older one, because she wants to keep an eye on what's going on. But massively protect you. And I always feel 100% fine when I'm out of the woods with my dogs or my horses, because the animals alert you to anything coming, and they also, by their reaction, by how quickly they go up or down again, alert you to whether there's anything you need to be worried about as well, which is really, really good. So that's why it's such an advantage surrounding yourself by animals, because they are a really good early warning sign for you. And also just watching how quickly they react, because they have to. That's their survival instincts. They're not going to survive if they're not still very tuned in with that intuition. So isn't it lovely,
Yeah.
you know, throughout this conversation, because I know where you are, you still got really stringent restrictions in place, and yet it's just not the focus of our conversation anymore, is it?
No, no. It's very tiresome, those conversations, you know? It's like nothing changes overnight unless some drastic things happen for it to change overnight. And as you've seen, I watched your video with Janine this morning, and it's like they will tell you one thing, but they'll do something else anyway. So
Exactly.
what, you know, like what is really going on? But I do know that on a lighter note and a much more positive note, that some you saw you would have seen the video with the Qantas pilot that went viral a couple of
Yes.
months ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
that was amazing. Yeah.
So he's one of the main leaders at the Canberra rally. Him
Wow.
and a few other guys, and Craig Kelly, who I'm sure you probably know it as well. He's a politician. Craig Kelly actually got him and a few of the elders, the Aboriginal elders, and a few other people from the leadership team into Parliament House to actually negotiate some terms. And they signed these papers and everything, and they basically said, I don't remember, I only watched the video once, so I won't remember them all. But basically, he pretty much said, undo everything, you know, but he was obviously very specific with what they wanted. So, but basically, it's like, undo everything, get rid of everything, you know, like now, pretty much, like as soon as like, you know, immediately.
Gosh.
So that's really interesting that Parliament actually let them in to negotiate some demands.
And it's just absolutely magical, because I can remember seeing his video ages ago, and it was so from the heart, and it was a pilot that was been doing his job, loved it for all his years, and he was just a bit like you said when you said last night, no, I only let love and light in. He was just like, no, and you know, there's so many people that think I can't do this because I can't do that because, and it was just incredible to see what every single individual is capable of when they really say, that is my boundary and it is completely non-negotiable. Such an inspiration. I think, you know, when I look back through the journeys, and I've only seen a fraction of it because I'm too busy I miss a lot of the stuff that people send through to me because I just haven't got time to watch it. And I've just seen such amazing things from people coming through, and just what ordinary people are capable of when they put their mind to it, and when they put their, you know, follow their soul, follow their intuition. It's just really wonderful. So I haven't got any worries about the future, I must say. I do think it's absolutely tragic, the victims that are falling along the way. And I feel on a personal level, you know, that it's hard to sort of know where your responsibilities end and where other people's give in. And that's sort of something I haven't got a good answer for at the moment. But what I do see is when these people really stand up and say, no, it's just wonderful what can be achieved. And you just think, wow. And he was amazing, wasn't he, David? Because when he did his original speech, he was like, look, I'm not perfect. I've had this issue and I've had that issue. And this is what I love, is a lot of the people that are standing up, they've reached a stage in their life where they're just really happy to be 100% transparent. And no one has to be perfect in this. You are allowed to make mistakes. It's what you then do when you realize perhaps that's not in your highest good or other people's highest goods, I think.
Yeah, I think that the problem is with humans is that we don't want to make mistakes, or we don't want to be seen to make mistakes. We don't want to make the wrong decision, and I get that. But you know, what I see with some people around me is what, you know, you watched the Rose Ike 6 a couple of weeks ago.
I did.
where
Everyone
where,
should go and watch that. Yeah.
where Dave said in throughout history there are three kinds of people. There's the people that don't know what's going on and they just follow it because that's what they think. There's people that can see what's going on but just follow it out of fear. And then
Mm.
you've got the renegades who say, no, I'm not going to do any of it. And it's the people in the middle that I find most frustrating
Yes.
because they can see it, but they comply anyway. And it, and if only they just said no as well, then things would happen so much faster,
Yeah.
right? And it's those are the people that are really kind of letting not just the agenda, but also the things like the green passport and all that stuff. Like those are the people that look for loopholes. Those are the
Yes.
people that say, okay, well, I've got a loophole now. I'm not going to get the thing, but I found a way that I can still go and do everything else that I could normally have done
Mm.
without getting it. Those are the people that really, really annoy me. And it's really heartbreaking to see, certain people, that are really close to me that are in that position, because I did expect more of them, especially knowing their history, and some of them know, but some of them, yes, some of them I would consider as being an activist in some ways, for a lot of different things, but they're not really stepping up, and it really, it's concerning,
Yeah, I think when you realize that it's your own personal expectations that have been broken,
Right.
it
Yeah.
puts things in a different perspective, and that's something I have to remind myself of daily. And that's something I learned from a coach a couple of years ago, and it's really stuck with me because I have to keep reminding myself in those situations it's our expectations of them that have
Yeah.
disappointed us. But I just think when you're not that type of person, they can't understand us any more than we can understand them. But it's been said throughout history, the worst people aren't necessarily the people who run the concentration camps. It's the people that did nothing, or that transported them there, or wouldn't give them shelter, or wouldn't give them food, or turned a blind eye. And for me, in this life, in this body, I've never been that type of person. So I don't get it. But I equally understand that that's my standards and not theirs. And I
Yeah. No.
have to keep
Yeah.
reminding myself of that. And I find it really hard because you just can't, just like we can't get into the mindset of the psychopaths and we don't want to, I can't get into that mindset as to how you could sit back and let that happen. I just can't and don't want to.
Yeah. No. It's just really strange to see. It's like someone who, let's just pretend, always picks up litter on the street,
Yeah.
just random litter on the street, but then they see something else on the street and they don't do it that time.
Mm.
It's kind of like that, and you would go, well, you would do it normally, like why aren't you doing it now? And it's like, oh, I don't want to piss any I don't want to, I don't want to piss anybody off, or whatever it is, but that's just an excuse in my opinion. It's like,
Yeah.
because you can't afford to care what people think. If you want change, then you're going to have to not care what people think, because it's the mentality of the mass. Nobody that thinks like everybody else ever changed the world, do they?
Oh, completely. And also that, don't you think, David, that the only way you can get there is just getting more and more comfortable with yourself, warts and all, as we say.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's funny because I was talking to my friend Dale about this a while back, and he was like, doing YouTube and putting out videos or whatever platform it is, it really helps you thicken your skin in many ways. It's a big personal development exercise because you really do have to, do away with what people think,
Yeah.
and he said, have you gotten rid of that? Do you still give a fuck? Do you still care what people think? And I go, yeah, not anywhere near as much as I used to. Of course, a little bit,
Mm.
but not nowhere near as much as I used to, because and actually, so it's quite funny. His mum actually works at a book depot, and they throw out all these books all the time, and she sent me a copy of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck because they were going to get rid of it. So now I've got that to read.
I must read that actually, because I've quite a few people have said that's really, really good. And do you find, I'm just looking at the time, but one thing that I find, because that's something that I, have found has been a huge progression for me, but there's a big but in there for me. So I think it's very easy for me to not care what strangers think about me. But there's certain people that are close to me that I very much obviously do still care about and work, still. So it's hysterical. Like, so many of my friends have got no idea I've got a YouTube channel. No idea at all. And I find that quite interesting and hysterical, really. And
I share that same experience. And I think most people would.
Yeah. And I think, it's lovely. I just am so happy I'm getting old. I haven't got any desire. You know how people say they always want to be younger and things like that? Well, emotionally, I'm very immature, so I've got that. But I just think I'm really pleased I've been through all these stages of life, because as you do get older, you do get a lot less conscious about your appearance. You don't care so much about that. You want people to like you for you. Sorry, I'm distracted. I must just say, this sums it up perfectly about not caring what people think. So some of my animals are really scared by these builders, and then Idris, who everyone hears me talk about, tall Idris, the wonder cat as we call him, he's out there with the diggers on the building van and everything, exploring, completely not worried by any of it. And every time I want to look at self-development, I ask myself, what would Idris do? And he's brave, he enjoys life to the full, he explores everything, he keeps questioning everything, and he loves himself, and everyone else loves him.
It's hard not to love a cat, I think.
It's so hard not to love a cat. You just can't. And it's just fascinating to see. So, oh my God, we must carry this on next time. We really must. So hopefully we'll be back with Bryce and Medina next week. Anything else you want to leave us with? How are your songs coming on, David? Have you got any new songs?
Yeah, I've read one actually. It's a hip hop track. So I had to re-record some of the vocals for my cousin's song because some of them are a little bit out of tune. I tried to tune them with this auto tuner thing, and it kind of made it sound a bit strange. So still kind of working on that one to make it a bit better. But I wrote this hip hop track which came together quite quickly, and I wrote the lyrics, and I actually wrote some more lyrics last night when I couldn't sleep because I was like, well, what am I going to do? I got time, so I wrote some more lyrics last night. But it's about the experience I had when I got turned away from a burger shop in the city because I wasn't wearing a muzzle, but then I also, because I had to kind of write more about it in the verses, so that's more about the chorus. But then in the verses I'm kind of talking more about how people had trusted the government, and now this has happened, all the different things that they were told to do and stuff like that. So that should be ready fairly soon.
Great. Send me the link when you've got it, and I'll put it around to people. So
yeah, thank you. And apart from that, I'll be launching my podcast this week. So I've recorded 10 episodes for the first season, and yeah, I was going to say I have to put a day on it because I've just edited a couple of the episodes, so now it's all ready to go. And I got a cool video intro, and I did a voiceover as well for the other intro, and found some cool music online which I put that on. But yeah, that'll come out probably in the next couple of days. So I'll put that on my YouTube channel and post it on different podcast platforms as well, which I don't know about yet. So I have to work that out. That's the thing that's really holding me back at the moment, is that figuring out like what platform to go on and finding the one that I can post it to all the different platforms so I don't have to go and manually do it.
I'm reaching out for help with that as well, because I'm in exactly the same position as you, and that is just not my forte at all. So if anyone can help us out for that, please, because I just think, and I have that is where I notice I do have a little bit of a mental block that I can't do that. So yeah, I need some technical help with that. Well, let us know when we've got that, but people will be able to find them on your normal YouTube channel, which the link will be below anyway.
Yeah. So the podcast is for anybody who wants to discover new talent in, you know, in art, in music, in writing, or in filmmaking, and also for people who maybe want to get started in either any of those areas, and maybe need a little bit of a nudge, you know, or they want to, or they're already started and they want to know some, you know, what the business side of things is like. Because if
Yeah.
you want to make this, your career, then you are going to need to know how the business works. So that's why I started the podcast.
Oh, that's fantastic. I can't wait to listen to those. So thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for the internet for behaving. It chopped off when I was downloading my Zoom yesterday. Weirdest thing ever. Weird. It chopped off some of my videos, which is really weird. So fingers crossed that will be okay. And we'll speak again next week.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Catherine.
Thanks, David. Take care.